For most of human history, there were no wars. Small groups of humans simply moved from place to place. They hunted, they gathered. And when food became scarce, they could simply move somewhere else. There was plenty of land, and not enough people to fight over all of it. But then, something changed. Humans stopped moving and started staying. More people meant more competition, and competition slowly created tension. One group wanted more land. Another group already lived there. And now, moving away was no longer the easy answer, because this land was home. Their families had grown up there. They had built everything they owned there. So when another group wanted their land, leaving was no longer an option. For the first time, staying meant fighting for something. And suddenly, a simple disagreement could become much more dangerous. At first, people probably tried to talk. Maybe they tried to make a deal. But what happened when nobody agreed? That was when fear entered the story. What if the other group attacked first? What if they took everything? And what if waiting made them weaker? So humans began preparing for something they had never truly faced before. They started gathering together, not to hunt, but to protect what was theirs. For the first time, people were organizing for conflict, and that changed everything. A group of hunters could fight when necessary, but an organized group could fight together. They could follow a plan. They could move as one, and together, they became far more powerful than any one person alone. But organizing for defense created a new problem. Someone had to make the decisions. Who should lead? Who would decide when to act? And who would everyone obey? In peaceful times, everyone could have a voice. But danger didn't wait for everyone to agree. Sometimes someone had to decide immediately. And the person who made those decisions gained something new: power. And once someone gained power, they rarely wanted to give it back. The group had listened to him during danger, and they had survived. So naturally, people began trusting him more. Soon, they started asking him about more than just war. Who should get the best land? Who should receive more food? Who was right when two people disagreed? Little by little, his authority grew, and leadership was beginning to change into something much bigger. Because now, this leader had something others did not: the power to make decisions for everyone else. And once people accepted those decisions, his power became stronger. But power created another problem. What happened when someone else wanted that power? Now, conflict was no longer only between different groups. Sometimes, it began inside the same village. And that made organized conflict even more dangerous. Because now, humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for land. They were fighting for food. And sometimes, they were fighting for power. But fighting alone was not enough. To win, people needed to work together. They needed a leader. They needed a plan. And they needed to trust each other. This was no longer a random fight. Something new was beginning. Humans had discovered something dangerous. If enough people followed one plan, they could become stronger than anyone standing alone. And that gave leaders an idea. Why wait for danger to come to them? What if they acted first? What if they took the land before someone else could? Suddenly, conflict could become a strategy. And strategy could turn conflict into war. And once war began, human history would never be the same. But war did not begin with kings or giant armies. It began with ordinary people. People who wanted to protect their homes. People who wanted more food. People who wanted more land. And people who wanted power. Those simple desires could collide. And when nobody was willing to give up, words could stop working. And organized violence became the answer. But the first wars were probably nothing like the wars we imagine today. There were no massive armies, no giant castles, and no kings giving orders. Just ordinary people trying to protect everything they had built. But even a small conflict could change everything. Because once one group learned how to organize, other groups had to learn too. And slowly, conflict began to evolve. Small conflicts taught humans an important lesson. If your neighbors could attack you, then you needed to be ready. And being ready meant becoming more organized. More organized communities became stronger, and stronger communities could control more land. But controlling more land created more enemies, and more enemies meant more preparation. Soon, preparing for conflict, and that changed the future of human civilization forever. As communities grew stronger, their leaders became more important. People needed someone who could make decisions quickly, someone who knew when to negotiate and when to prepare for danger. But powerful leaders needed loyal followers. So alliances became more important than ever. Two small communities could become much stronger together. But alliances also created bigger rivalries. A disagreement between two villages could now pull in many more people. And for the first time, conflict could spread far beyond where it began. And as conflict spread, communities had to change. Some people became warriors. Their job was no longer farming or hunting. Their job was to protect the community. Others became responsible for storing food. Others organized supplies. And leaders became responsible for bigger decisions. Who should be protected? Who should be sent to fight? And who would have the power to decide? That was the moment everything began to change. A leader was no longer just the strongest person in the group. That was the moment everything began to change. He could command warriors. He could control resources. And people increasingly depended on him. Power was becoming permanent. And permanent power needed a way to survive after one leader was gone. And slowly, leadership could become inheritance. And that may have been how the first kings were born.